Hey all, it's Mark here to bring you another off-season SLP short. This one looks at Kingston Rovers, and we have two SLP debutants talking to us. First, Tom Andrews takes us through 2018 that he very neatly sums up. Then Hull Live reporter Gareth Westmorland gets us caught up on all the moves that have taken place and may take place in a busy off-season for the Robins. Finally, they both give us what I have to say are very, very measured predictions for 2019. We hope you enjoy two new voices on this SLP short. So to review the 2018 season for Kingston Rovers, we're joined by rising star of the Super League pod family, Tom Andrews. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Good evening, Matt. Nice to meet nice to hear your voice finally, and hello to the SLP.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on board. Okay, so like we've been doing with these shows, before I get to your sort of recollections of the year, the goods, the bads, and the ups and the downs, I'm just going to let you know how I predicted the season to go for Hull Kingston Rovers and what actually happened. So I actually predicted that Rovers would finish in the top three of the qualifying eights, which is where they finished. They finished third in the qualifiers. So it's another team that I did quite well on the predictions pre-season.
Yeah, pretty much right.
Don't worry, there's plenty to come where I've not got it right. We had some other fan views, although very brief ones on 2018 before we get to yours, Tom. So, usual, regular Super League pod co-host Tim G, he got in touch. He said his review of the season was just being hashtag in this together. So is that some hashtag that Rovers were using during the year?
I'm not sure, but it's quite apt.
And Gary Tanton said, just glad to still be in Super League, which of course you are, and that's probably the highlight takeaway from the season. But let's run through the campaign and sort of go through the ebbs and flows of it all, Tom, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure.
So, you made a poor start. I'm not going to dress it up.
Very poor.
Lost 7 of the opening 9, including the turnaround loss in the Easter Derby, which I'm sure hurt a lot, and then only won 3 games within the first 18 rounds. There was a draw in round 18 as well against Castleford. So through that first sort of 5-6 months of the season, what were your main takeaways of the side? How were you feeling going through that part of the campaign?
Well, I always knew it would be rough coming back up from the Championship. It's not going to be easy for anybody, but I think the main thing going through everyone's head is we hadn't recruited enough, especially in the forwards, because we seemed to be getting completely battered down the front. But we had big players like Massoy and Mulhern, and even they were getting turned over by somewhat smaller props.
So there was a question mark, I guess, with not necessarily the physicality of them, but with the conditioning of them. They didn't tend to last the course, maybe, against the other sides.
Yeah, there was a lot of emphasis pre-season how fit everybody was, but it didn't seem to show. We got into winning positions some games and just disappeared.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there were narrow losses away, wasn't there? Along the way, there was Catalan away was a 2-point loss. There was Leeds at home was a 2-point loss. So
there's a common factor between those two, and his name rhymes with Mickey Mouse.
Oh right, okay. We're going full ref's fault on those narrow.
Definitely on the Catalan one.
Fair enough. And there was other. There was the game at Ellen Road really early in the season where I thought everyone in the Hull Chaos side kind of really acquitted themselves dead well, and probably neutral observers like me were thinking there's some talent in this side. And maybe that, even though it was in defeat, and maybe that didn't quite get realised through that first sort of 6 months of the season with a lot of defeats basically in that time. So I mean, did you have any confidence in that you could turn it around? Were you worried about it at that stage, or were you seeing enough from some of the players? Like Robbie Mulhern was having a good season. Chris Atkin was another player who got named up into the England Knights squad midway through the season. So was there some?
There was some games where you're like, yeah, this team's got it. And I think the one that sticks in my head was Huddersfield away. We played some fantastic rugby on that day. Could have scored 4 tries of the season on that particular one.
Yeah,
but then,
big win as well, like 38-6 that one.
Huddersfield were going really well at that point, if I remember right.
No, they were rubbish, mate.
Were they? Never mind.
But so were you. So, it was an important win, wasn't it? It was two sides who hadn't started the season great. And I guess you would have hoped at that point, that was round 6, that maybe things could have kicked on. But unfortunately, you were up against St Helens next. And then came the derby, the Easter derby game. I mean, a rollercoaster of emotions, I guess, in that one.
Yeah. I think the team in that one felt guilty of thinking they'd won it as soon as Farimo got sent off.
No, and that was really early on in the game, weren't it?
About 8 minutes in, I believe.
Yeah.
Went and scored 2 tries down that wing that he'd got sent off on, then stopped going there for some reason. And I think that's just what turned it. And they got some momentum back into it, and I think they just wanted it more than us on that day, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, you did have a home win over Wigan along that way, so that must have been a highlight moment.
I think that was probably my favourite game this season, if I'm honest.
Fair enough. I mean, it was a big win, 24-8 against a team that was second in the league at the time.
Yeah, everything about it just seemed to go well in that game. There was an atmosphere in the crowd as well, just from even before kickoff. You just felt something was happening in that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that's been consistent throughout the season was the crowds. I mean, the regular season finished off well as well. You won 4 of the last 5, including a derby win in round 23. So
yes.
Do you think that set you up for the middle eights?
I believe so, yeah. You need to go into those with momentum from experience. Since we've been in them every single year, kind of what we need to do.
An old hand, yeah. I mean, there was the draw against Cass, and then there was wins over Huddersfield, who at that point had started to become a bit of a force. So that was the home win over Huddersfield, a big win over Salford before they found their feet, and a close win over Widnes as well, which meant that you were beating some of the teams around you, and then there was the Hull FC game. I'm guessing the returning Craig Hall as well in that game with the tries and Ben Crooks as well. Maybe a highlight moment of the season. I don't want to put it into. I don't want to preempt it too much, but one of the best moments of the season, was it?
Oh well, yeah. You ask any KR fan, will say that. Yeah, Craig Hall coming back was fantastic. It's exactly what we needed and was lacking on at that time. And to come back and do that against the old enemy was extra special.
Yeah. Then into the qualifiers, there was 4 successive qualifiers wins after a loss in the first round. So there was crucial away scalps of Toronto and Leeds in high-scoring games. Do you think that set the platform for Super League safety, or was there a time during that qualifiers where you were actually really concerned that maybe the upstarts like Toulouse and Toronto might get you?
I think it was after we just scraped past Toronto, and then I was thinking after that game, oh god, here we go again, because we didn't beat a championship side convincingly, and I was thinking, oh no.
You'd been there before 2 years ago, yeah.
But when we went to Leeds and beat them after a very close game, I thought, yeah, we've done it now, even at that point.
So you weren't really particularly concerned. I guess the lack of form of a couple of the other sides, Widnes in particular, maybe made you feel comfortable.
Yeah, that helped.
Going through that spell. So you've touched on a couple of the moments of the year: the Wigan game at home, the Hull game away. But what was your game of the year? Who was your player of the year? Maybe what surprised you this season in a happy, nice way?
Game of the year, I would say, was probably that Wigan game. I just thought that was one of the best team performances we've had all year. Just like I say, the crowd, atmosphere, everything about the game will live on in memory. And
if I'm right, it turned around, because was the cup game the week before when Wigan had
two weeks before, I think, when you turned us over on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 weeks, it was like a completely different side.
So what about who were the player of the year, I suppose, for you?
Player of the year, without a doubt, would be Adam Quinlan.
Yeah, he did have a lot of impact,
massively underrated by the media and stuff. Meaning, like, if he was playing for a bigger team, he'd have been up there in the dream team talks, I think.
Yeah, do you think it's possibly because you were a top you were a bottom four team throughout the season, that he was going under the radar until you started to win some games, and by that point, obviously, it was probably a bit late for him to get in the dream team reckoning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always going to happen when you're not winning games, isn't it?
Yeah. What about some of the surprises for you this year? Was there any players that you kind of brought through from that championship squad last year that maybe you weren't expecting to do as well as they did?
I thought Chris Atkin would struggle, to be honest. Whilst you saw like little glimpses last season, we saw glimpses of what he could do. He just didn't seem on the same wavelength as the other players, if you know what I mean. Like kicking through for people who just were stood still and things like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh no. But I think having a pre-season in him has helped massively.
Yeah, and quite a few creative players around, I suppose, with Danny McGuire coming in, Quinlan, like you mentioned, that they seemed to read each other's game, didn't they, as things went on through the season. It took a little bit of time to gel. What about any of the young players? Because if I'm right, I've probably maybe got this a bit mistaken, but one of the youngest ever players to play in Super League turned out for Hull KR in 2018.
Elliot Wallace, I believe.
Yeah, on the wing.
Yeah.
So, and there was a couple of other young debutants that made their way in towards the back end of the year as well. Was that a pleasing factor of this season?
Yeah, Elliot. I don't see too much of the City of Hull games, to be honest, but Elliot Wallace sort of very much surprised me because all the talk has been about Will Oakes coming through and how good he's going to be, which I do think he will be. But then Elliot Wallace sort of came out of nowhere and he got exposed a couple of times on defence, but like that's going to happen to a young kid, isn't it?
No, exactly, yeah.
But yeah, he's looking like he could be one of the next big things for us.
So you're overriding sort of summary of 2018 then, Tom?
Very shit start. Sort of. We did what we had to do. That's my one sentence summary.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to close off this section of the Hull KR SLP short. Thanks, Tom.
No problem.
Hi Gareth, welcome to Super League Pod and thanks for joining us for this Hull Kingston Rovers edition of our off-season trip around the clubs. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
No, we appreciate your time. I'm going to run through first the transactions that have gone on from last season to this season, if that's okay. So I'm going to list a lot of names. The outs for Hull Kingston Rovers are Kavanagh, Salter, Marsh, Clarkson, both Carneys, Heffernan, Tickle, Moss, Waln, Clavering, Donaldson, Blair and Frank. And then the ins are Kinehorst, Lannon, Haraki, and the big signings probably Garbutt and Linnett, plus the mid-season signings of Crooks and Hall and Joel Tompkins, who's just signed a new contract. So it's a big player turnover for Hull KR this time around. So first, would you be able to touch on some of the departures? Because some of the ones that fans seem most disappointed about are maybe Donaldson and Blair. Yeah,
touch on Donaldson first. It was one that really I expected to see stay at the club. I know, it was off contract for all, the entire season. He was working hard, but he was a regular figure in the team. Battled back from injury, and he never really lost his place. Chris Clarkson as well really impressed over the last 2-3 months of the season, and he was instrumental in kind of keeping Rovers up as well as a lot of other people that have been let go. Danny Tickle. I expect to see him stay in rugby league in some capacity, but part time. The others were pretty much as you were predicted. Kavanagh maybe is another surprise one that he's dropped down to the Championship with Halifax, but he's a Halifax lad, so that's maybe why he's been attracted to that club. But yeah, I think there's 12 departures all. When you come to count them up, am I right?
Well, there's a lot. I've not got enough fingers, Gareth. I know that much.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you look back on Rovers' first season in Super League way back in 2007, and it was a similar sort of turnover then. And I think that's key for a club that really wants to, or is eyeing to kick on in 2019, as they did do in 2008 and 2009 onwards. They really need to kind of improve the quality rather than have quantity there. There still needs to be strength and depth, but there needs to be better quality players in those positions that are going to push those players that have been kept on from 2018. Definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense, because the way I kind of looked at Hull KR squad last year was it was a team that was almost built to survive the qualifiers, whereas this